What does it mean to be the best? To become the best, you have to be the undisputed peak of your field, surpassing everyone there is to surpass. But what would that even do to you to be the best for such a sustained period? Something that a lot of shonen battle manga tends to include in one way or another is the idea of the strongest. Whether it be Saitama's futile search for an equal, Goku's never-ending hunger for the most skilled foe he could face, or the stark coldness that fills Satoru Gojo when Geto leaves him alone at the pinnacle of Jujutsu Society. I want to take a look at how the concept of being the best has manifested itself in modern shonen manga and how its role has fundamentally changed over the years. I particularly want to look at that last example, Satoru Gojo, as kind of an endpoint for where we stand in the industry today. Modern animanga has had a far more varied view when it comes to what the role of the strongest is, more so than we've classically seen. Generally, becoming the strongest has either been a goal or a direct means of obtaining one. Naruto's life goal was to be the Hokage, but to do so, it was a necessity that he become the strongest shinobi in the Leaf Village. Giorno Giovanna wanted to become a mob boss, but in order to do so, he had to defeat arguably the strongest stand user in his entire timeline. You get the point. Becoming the strongest generally isn't exactly the goal, but whatever the goal is, becoming the best is necessary to procure it. The notion of the best being an endpoint or a direct path to an endpoint, while it makes for a great and satisfying ending to a long-running manga, it fails to acknowledge one of the most important aspects of becoming the best. It isn't an event. Being the best is a status. When you become the UFC champion, for example, that isn't the end of your story. It's simply the next step in it. Though due to the nature of these ultimately just being stories that are told in a manga, which are almost universally told by just a single person, the story has to end someplace. But ending the story with this crucial next step in a character's life leaves a lot of potentially interesting character study on the table, following them getting what they always wanted. Was it worth the effort? Was it all they ever hoped it would be? Now, I'm going to be the first person to say this, but thankfully Boruto exists, so we can answer some of these questions in the case of Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto Uzumaki was brought into the world with nothing. His parents were both killed on the night of his birth, and the demon that killed him and massacred his home village was sealed inside of him, leading to everyone in the village shunning him as they were cautious of letting Kurama out. Truly, Naruto was destined to be alone from the beginning. I'm not going to recap the entirety of Naruto and Naruto Shippuden in this video, but if you're here, you've most likely seen the show and you understand the struggles that Naruto had to endure to become accepted from his village. He had to fight practically an entire world war on every single front, just to mention one. Growing up, Naruto had nobody to look out for him, nobody to stop him from making mistakes or guide him through life. The only time he could get anybody to acknowledge his existence even was when he caused havoc and became a general public disturbance around the Leaf Village, and when he claimed that he would become the Hokage. Something important to know is what exactly the position of Hokage means to Naruto at this point in his life. To him, growing up, it had to mean acceptance. The Hokage is a position that, as the leader of the Hidden Leaf Village, affects every single member in it, and to be in that position, you'd have to be recognized by the entire village as being worthy of it. And Naruto, someone who was shunned by the village his entire life, desperately needed to be recognized. To Naruto, that's what becoming the strongest meant. It was his path for being accepted for who he is, to conquer the loneliness that perpetuated his entire life growing up, to show the village that he isn't a threat, and he's stronger than the demon fox inside of him. That's why Naruto fought so hard. That's what he strived for throughout the entire series. But is that what really happens once Naruto does become the Hokage? Well, yeah, to a point. In Boruto, we see Naruto living out the life he's always dreamed of. He has a family, everyone in the village loves him, and Sasuke is back in the village helping as the Shadow Hokage. From what we could see in Boruto, becoming the Hokage truly did end up meaning everything that it originally meant to Naruto. This is a pretty good standpoint for where the industry sort of started with this concept. Becoming the strongest directly helped a character get their goal, and it was always worth it. Boruto is so great because there are so many people that followed Naruto's journey to become the Hokage that, whether you think it was done well or otherwise, seeing him finally live out that dream is incredibly cathartic. But what if we were to begin the story with someone who's already attained their goal? What then would life look like? What do you do when nothing in this universe could possibly threaten your position as the strongest? Saitama, the main character of One Punch Man. If you haven't watched or read One Punch Man, I'm sure you can guess the gimmick from the name. The main character Saitama is so strong that no matter the villain, he's able to defeat them in a single punch, though they stretch the definition later on in the manga. That being said, one might ask, in a genre defined by the question, can he win, what's left for a story where you already know the answer before you've even opened up the book? Unlike most shonen battle manga, the utter dominance that Saitama has over everyone else in the story isn't exactly framed as a good thing. He isn't some righteous hero who fights for the good of humanity. He does it because he needs money. In his own words, he's only a hero for fun. Saitama's strength completely disconnects him from his job. How can he take being a C-class hero seriously when he's as strong as he is? And for that matter, what would the strongest even mean to Saitama? I mean, really, from what we see, it's just a burden. When Saitama set out to train, he didn't intend to become the strongest. He just wanted to hold his own as a hero. He was tired of his boring, repetitive 9-to-5 life and just wanted to do something interesting. But in his training, he somehow broke his limiter and ended up becoming the strongest hero ever to live, and for him, that was just too far. All Saitama wanted was a consistent and stimulating challenge, but he trained himself so hard that he went too far, and it's just never going to be a possibility again. Saitama literally dreams of being challenged. He cannot stand the lack of effort it takes to defeat each enemy. He only wants to be excited every day, but with his immense strength, even that eludes him. He gets more excited from playing video games with King than fighting world-ending monsters. To Saitama, being the strongest is a curse. It's a burden that he has to bear, dooming him to never feel the rush of excitement you'd feel if you don't know you could best your opponent ever again. All sorcerers know Satoru Gojo. In the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, Gojo is an omnipresent factor in the very concept of Jujutsu sorcery. As its modern-day peak, everyone else is forced through comparison to him. This quote from Hikari perfectly sums up what Gojo means to the Jujutsu world. Just his birth shifted the balance of the Jujutsu world. There's not a single aspect of society that remained the same once he came into existence. Due to the circumstances of his birth, Gojo is a focal point for Jujutsu society. Every single sorcerer either knows Gojo personally or knows about him. Imagine if your field of work or study had one definitive peak, one person who everyone knows is the best in the world at anything and everything related to the skill that your job takes. That person would be adored, and what I'd argue is more important for characterization of Gojo, they'd be dehumanized. Gojo never really had the chance to be a regular person. He was born with the incredibly rare combination of the 6 eyes, which allow for pinpoint cursed energy control, efficiency, and knowledge of any cursed technique he could see, in combination with the cursed technique Infinity, which makes an effect similar to there being infinite space between him and everything else, giving him the ultimate defense, as well as arguably the most destructive and powerful offensive capabilities in the entire world of Jujutsu Kaisen. This once-in-a-100-generation combination of abilities instantly made Gojo the strongest sorcerer of today. We don't get to see very much of Gojo's life growing up. The only glimpse we get of his early life is a single shot from Toji's perspective. Toji is another character who struggles with strength. Similarly to Gojo, he was ravaged by expectation, but from a different perspective. The Zenin clan is incredibly power-hungry, pursuing leverage over the other important Jujutsu families in every way possible. So for them to create a child with zero cursed energy whatsoever was seen as a stain on their reputation. No matter what Toji did, having no cursed energy made it so that he would never be enough for his family. Toji eventually turned to a life of assassination to make a living. Having the heavenly restriction of no cursed energy led to him being physically stronger and faster than most Jujutsu sorcerers could ever hope to be. So it was one of the few jobs he could pretty easily take on. The first job we see him take on is to kill Satoru Gojo when he was just a little kid. That one shot, though, that one shot of Gojo noticing Toji from a distance and deadpan staring directly at him just displays such an immense level of apathy, and at such a young age, it's so disheartening to see. Gojo is inundated with years upon years of being told that he is and always will be the best. That, by this point, even though he's still a kid, and we don't know his age, but he's barely 12 years old if I had to guess, he's just completely and utterly devoid of emotion. This is what astounded me about the character of Satoru Gojo. He's clearly just utterly detached from his surroundings, as his curse technique is clearly meant to represent. He could participate in Jujutsu society, sure, but being so ridiculously strong makes it so that he can never make true contact with anything, in a very literal sense. How could he ever truly understand what it means to be human when he's so detached from other humans at large? The next time we see Gojo, his condition has somewhat improved. In his teenage years, he began to attend Jujutsu High, and at that school he met the single most important person to his development, Suguru Geto. Suguru Geto fulfills the one role in Gojo's life that he never thought would be possible. Not just a genuine human connection, but true understanding. Geto has a curse technique that allows him to control other cursed spirits, and as Gojo hasn't yet mastered infinity at this point in his life, Gojo is no longer considered the strongest. He and Geto, together, are the strongest. Gojo would only ever see this level of connection at one other time in his life, which we'll get to, but having someone who is at his level of power grounded him. In a society centered around fighting, not having to try to win a fight will really detach anyone from it. But having Geto there fundamentally changed how Gojo saw the world. With somebody he could truly understand and open himself up to, Gojo had the chance to live a normal life, like anyone else, despite his immense and isolating power. But as we all know, Toji would resurface, killing a young girl that Gojo and Geto were tasked with protecting named Riko Amanai, who was supposed to be the star plasma vessel. The exact details of what that means are a little complicated, but effectively, she'd have to sacrifice her life to save the world. Geto offered her an out and the chance to live her own life, free of the responsibility of the star plasma vessel, and she agreed. Unfortunately, before she could take Geto's hand and walk back together to her life, she was shot dead by Toji. This event led Geto down a spiral, which would result in him vowing to kill all non-sorcerers. That's like 99% of the world's population, considering how rare they are, and that practically only the Japanese are able to become sorcerers, with a very, very rare exception. This, of course, led to his attack on Jujutsu High in JJK0, and ultimately his death at the hands of Yuta, a young child struggling with his own immense power that Gojo took under his wing. There, Gojo watched as his last chance for true connection, true understanding, faded away before his eyes, not even able to bring himself to curse his friend at the end. This is where we find Gojo when the main characters of Jujutsu Kaisen are introduced to him at the beginning of the story. A cold, self-absorbed, lonely man. He opens himself up to his students to a point, sure, but from that moment on, the true responsibility of being the strongest takes hold in Gojo's heart. Which brings us to where Gojo's story ends. Sukuna, known as the strongest sorcerer in history, was fully released from his shackles and able to roam free after having restored his lost power. As their ace in the hole, Gojo was sent in alone to fight him, confident in his ability to take care of Sukuna for good. Prior to this fight, Gojo outright stated that a full-power Sukuna would give him a little trouble, but that there was no way he could lose. And maybe he was right, but this wasn't just Sukuna's full power. Due to the circumstances of his revival, Sukuna had gained the one ability in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen that would let him kill Gojo. At the conclusion of the fight, Gojo had just struck a decisive blow against Sukuna. He destroyed the technique that Sukuna gained which would allow him to kill Gojo, and ripped apart his body at a molecular level. But what he couldn't account for was a once-in-a-lifetime, instantaneous, distance-negating attack from Sukuna that not even Gojo with his 6 eyes, which allow for pinpoint visualization of cursed energy, could see coming. Though when Gojo lay there, cut in half, bleeding on the floor, the look on his face wasn't surprise, not disdain for the fact that his students would have to finish the job, and many of them would likely die. But in his final moments, after having been bested by perhaps the only version of the only person in history who could have done so, what Gojo felt was true understanding and satisfaction. A man whose entire life, save for a few golden teenage years, couldn't be understood or make any true connections because of his unfathomable power, in his final moments found understanding with another whose journey through life was defined by his status as the strongest. A final note about Gojo that I'd like to discuss is this misguided idea that the cast of Jujutsu Kaisen only thought of him as a weapon. In my opinion, that's a very surface-level reading of Yuta's decision to use his body. They cared so deeply about him, but the dissonance between him and the rest of the characters, that's the true tragedy. It's not that nobody else cared, it's that Gojo didn't care. When Yuta asked Gojo if he could use his body should he lose the fight against Sukuna, he responded with, "Yeah, sure, whatever, I don't care." Gojo cared so little about his safety that he just agreed to have his body taken over by Yuta after his death. Gojo is the one that agreed to be used as a weapon after his death. And even if he projected an aura of confidence, it was just a facade, as we see in the final chapter during his flashback with Yuji. He went into the fight knowing, and probably hoping, that he would likely die, and he'd made his peace with it. So what does being the strongest mean to Gojo? It means responsibility. Responsibility to win fights, to train the next generation, to be a good role model. From the very beginning of his life, Gojo was burdened with the responsibility that comes with being the strongest. And when he was finally defeated, he smiled. Because he knew that he no longer had to hold the world on his shoulders. That he's done good enough, the next generation can help each other shoulder that burden. The point that I wanted to make with this video isn't that, actually, being the best kinda sucks, but more so that I wanted to point out this shift in the industry and how it characterizes being the strongest. From idolization to isolation. Semi-realism has permeated this generation of character study, and it's an interesting shift to see the industry take. The people who grew up reading classic shonen stories like the Big Three are of age where they're leading the industry now, and with that comes new thematic through lines that older mangaka might not have been interested in exploring. One of those being what exactly being the strongest means, in a more realistic and consistent light than it's been explored through in the past. I mean, this idea of what it means to be the strongest is baked so deeply into Gojo's character in just an integral way to how he's talked about, and that's ultimately what the tragedy of his character is. Being the strongest has been a goal or a necessity for a goal in anime and manga for almost as long as the shonen battle genre has existed, and while time has changed the way that we talk about it, it's interesting to me that it's just become so integral to modern shonen storytelling. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it's been a while, but now that I'm almost done with school, and I'll probably have a lot more free time coming up soon, I'd like to get back to making videos more often. I'd love to hear some feedback, so don't hesitate to leave a comment and a like on this video, or you could join my Discord from the link in the description. I'm active on there all the time, so if you tag me, I'll definitely read your message. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe for more, because I promise there will be more videos like this coming out soon. Peace.